Om Badram Karnebihi Shruniyama Devaha Badram Pashyema Akshabihir Yajatraha Stirairangayir Tushtuvam Sastanubihi Vyashema Devahitai Yadayuhu Swastinaha Indro Vridrashravaha Swastinaha Pusha Vishwavedaha Swastinaha Tarksho Arishtanemihi Swastino Bruhaspatir Dadatu Om Shanti 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 Yo Antaha Pravishya Mama Vacha Imam Prashuptam Sanjeevayati Akhila Shakti Daraswadamna Anyam Shtahasta Charana Shravanatvagadin Pranan Namo Bhagavate Purushaya Tubhyam Lasatu Shrimadananda Tirtendurno Hrudambare Yadvachaschandrika Swanta Santapam Vinikrantati Padavakya Pramana Jnan Pranamya Shirasa Gurun Vyakarishye Yata Bodham Vishnu Tattva Vinirnayam. So good evening to friends who have joined. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon for folks who have joined the 7th session of Atharvana Upanishad, which is also called Mundaka Upanishad. Okay, so where are we? So we are making very good progress at this point of time. So Om Brahma Devanam Pratamaha Sambhavuva Vishwasya Karta Bhuvanasya Gopta Sa Brahma Vidyam Sarva Vidyam Pratishtam Atharvaya Jeshtaputraya Praha Atharvane Yam Pravadeta Brahma Atharvantam Purovacha Angire Brahma Vidyam Sab Bharadvajaya Satyak Vahaya Paraha Bharadvajo Angirase Paravaram Shuanako Havai Mahashalaha Angirasam Vidivat Upasannaha Papracha Kasminna Bhagavo Vijñate Sarvamidam Vijñatam Bhavati Tasmai Sahovacha Dve Vidye Veditavye Itihasma Yad Brahma Vido Vadanti Parachaiva Aparacha Tatra Apara Rigvedo Atharva Vedaha Shiksha Kalpo Vyakaranam Niruktam Chando Jyotishamiti Atapara Yaya Tad Aksharam Adhigamyate Yat Tadreshyam Agrahyam Agotram Avarnam Achakshushhrotram Tadapani Padam Nityam Vidum Vibhum Sarvagatam Susukshmam Tad Avyayam Yad Bhuta Yonim Paripashyanti Dhiraha. So this is what we did last week, and we also touched upon Yata Vurnanabihi Srujate Grhnate Che Yata Prutivyam Oshadayaha Sambhavati Yata Sataha Purushat Keshalo Mani Tata Aksharat Sambhavati Iha Vishwam. That is the verse for today. So where were we? Just to have a brief recap. So Angirasa is teaching Shuanaka about Paravidya and Aparavidya, and he has said that the whole of the Vedic lore is Aparavidya when it is seen from a very superficial perspective, but it becomes Paravidya when we see Akshara in all the Vedas. Who is this Akshara? Immediately Angirasa says, this Akshara is whom? Yattad adreshyam agrahyam agotram avarnam achakshushhrotram tadapani padam. You cannot see him, you cannot grasp him, you cannot describe him in words. He is color, he doesn't have color, he is not color. He does not have material eyes and material ears. He does not have material hands and material legs. But who is he? He is Nityam. He is eternal. Vibhum, he is omnipotent. He is Sarvagatam, he is omnipresent. Susukshmam, Sukshmasya Sukshma, he is your Antaryami, he is inside you. Tad Avyayam, he is changeless. And his primary definition is Yat Bhutayonim. Who knows him as Bhutayonim? Paripashyanti Dhiraha. The knowledgeable know this Akshara as Bhutayonim. Yad Bhutayonim Paripashyanti Dhiraha. Okay, so we understood in that session how when we kind of comprehend this concept of God or the Supreme Being, we always start from a very negative aspect. We need to understand what he is not first. When we understand what he is not, then we can make a progress towards understanding what he is. And that is what this verse has done, isn't it? In the first half, what he is not, and in the second half, what he is. So the primary definition of this Akshara Namaka Paramatma is Yad Bhuta Yonim Paripashyanti Dhiraha. So Bhuta Yonim. So this is what we looked at. The last part of last week was to actually understand who this Bhuta Yonim is. So let's recap this. Bhuta and Yonim. Bhuta means what? Two aspects of bhutas. Bhuti, that which has bhuti is called bhuta. That which has the capacity to do sadhanas and elevate itself is called a bhuta. So sentient jivas are called as bhutas in one sense. And of course, you have the panchabhutas that make up the material world. They are also called bhutas. Yonim, yonim in Sanskrit, yoni in Sanskrit has got three meanings. Yoni, Bharya, Karana, Utpatti Sthana. So these are the three meanings of Yoni. It can be Bharya. Bharya is the consort or the wife. She is called Yoni. Karana, the one that is primarily responsible for something, is also called Yoni in Sanskrit. And also the base on which everything is created or happens is also called Utpatti Sthana. It is also called Yoni. So when you look at this, in this context, we got to take Karana and Utpatti Sthana as Yoni, and he is the Karana and Utpatti Sthana of what? All the bhutas. So this Akshara is the Karana and Utpatti Sthana of the bhutas. That is how the knowledgeable who have read the Vedas, who have understood the Brahma Sutras, celebrate this Akshara as Yat Bhuta Yonim Paripashyanti Dhiraha. Who is this Akshara? Bhuta Yonim. What did our Guru Vedavyasa describe in the second sutra? Brahmano Lakshanamaha Om Janmadhyasya Yataha. Okay. What is the definition of Brahman? He who is the creator, etc. of this world is called Brahman. So they are the same. So again, the Samanvaya is very clear. So you got the Sutra Prasthana where that gives a definition of Janmadhyasya Yataha. Then you have this Upanishad Prasthana that also says Yad Bhuta Yonim Paripashyanti Dhiraha. Okay. So he is a Bhuta Yoni, he is the creator. Okay, it's all well and good saying he is the creator. This Akshara is the creator. But what is the nature of his creation? Is the very next question that comes to our mind and should have come to Shuanaka's mind, and Angirasa answers that question. So this creatorship of Akshara, so concepts of Vedic cosmology. This is an important idea in Vedic philosophy, is the cosmology. How did the universe come about and what is the nature of this universe? This is a constant theme in the Upanishad. Every Upanishad will talk about cosmology because Janmadhyasya Yataha. Yeah. So it is not surprising that the Upanishads talk about this quite a lot. So let us look at this verse. Yata urnanabihi srujate grukhnate cha yata pruthivyam oshadayahat sambhavanti yata satah purushat keshalo mani tata aksharat sambhavati iha vishwam. So this is the primary definition of this Bhuta Yoni. Okay, so this is not an ordinary statement of the Upanishad, and it's a deep philosophical speculation that is there in these verses that Angirasa is giving to us through Shuanaka. So basically, as you know from Shvetashvatara Upanishad, which defines that all of existence has got only three components to it. Yeah. Jna, Ajna, Deva. That is what Shvetashvatara Upanishad says. Deva, which is Brahman, Ajna, which is Jada, and Nya, which is the Jivas. These three form the whole of existence, and there is nothing outside it. Okay. So, not surprisingly, then Angirasa talks about these three. All these three have a type of creation. Believe me, Brahman has a type of creation. Matter has a type of creation. Jivas have a type of creation. And these three have creation, which is what these three verses talk about. Yata urnanabihi srujate grihnate cha talks about the creation of matter. Yata pruthivyam oshadayaha sambhavanti talks about the jivas. Yata sataha purushat keshalomani talks about the nature of Brahman's creation of the universe. And of course, Brahman has got its own creation. So who is going to remind us when I say Brahman has his own creation, what do I actually mean there? So who wants to answer that very quick question?
Avatars.
So should repeat again?
Avatars of Bhagavanta.
Correct. Thank you, Sushil. So avatars. Avatars of Bhagavanta is a type of creation. His Vyuha forms, his avatara forms, you can consider as a type of creation, okay, in one form, okay. So these two primarily, let's look at the Jada creation and Jiva creation, from whom it comes from. Tata Aksharat Sambhavati Iha Vishwam. So last week we looked at this creation of the material world. Yeah. Yata urnanabihi srujate grihnate cha. So there we looked at the anatomy of the spider. Spider, urna. Urna means the silk thread that comes out from the nabi, from the abdomen. In which insect that the silk thread comes from the abdomen? It is the spider. So if you look at the anatomy of the spider, in its abdomen is the silk glands. And from the silk glands, there is a duct that comes out, and this is called a spinet. Okay, so the spinneret. The spinneret is what that actually creates this web. So this is a perfect example of how the universe is created. Because if you look at the spider is a living thing. It's got a jiva. It is a sentient being. So there is a sentiency in it, which is different from his body. And in the body is a silk gland, which makes the thread and weaves the thread, which we call as the web of the spider. Okay, so in this equation, note there is the sentient being, which is different from the spider. The sentient being does not become the thread. Very, very important to think about this problem. The silk thread, which comes out of the silk gland, is not the sentient being which is inside it. The sentient being directs the silk gland to make the silk threads. Okay, so that is a key idea, which is what this metaphor is all about. Vishnu, and from his nabi comes this web. This web in other areas is given an example of a lotus with 14 petals. And the 14 petals is because that represents the 14 lokas, or the levels of the material creation. Okay, so this material creation we know comes from the Mula Prakriti, which is there in Bhagavanta's womb, which is very similar to the silk gland here. And then the universe comes about very similar to how the web comes out of the spider. So this is a perfect example of illustrating that this Paramatma or Akshara is the efficient cause of the universe, and that there is a sentient principle behind creation, and that Mula Prakriti is the material cause of the universe. Okay. So this is a key idea of certain schools of Vedanta, and we will talk about this in today's session as to how does that fit into the various bhashyas of various acharyas. And more importantly, we are interested, because we are doing Atharvana Upanishad, we are interested in what is Angirasa's opinion. That is what we are doing here, isn't it? What is Angirasa's opinion? Angirasa is giving his opinion through an illustration. And that illustration here is the spider. And last week we discussed about how our rishis are not only philosophers, but they are also entomologists. They study the insects and the natural world around them and take those as examples to illustrate deeper levels of philosophy. So this sentient thing inside the spider is the efficient cause, whereas this Mula Prakriti, which is the silk gland, is the material cause. So this is called Nimitta Karana. This is called Upadana Karana. Brahman or Akshara is the Nimitta Karana of the universe, whereas Mula Prakriti is the Upadana Karana of the universe. Okay, hold on to that idea. So what is the next example that Angirasa is giving? Now he's spoken about how the material world comes about. Next he is talking about how do the jivas, the souls, how do they emerge, and how is their creation happening in the material world? Yata pruthivyam oshadayaha sambhavanti. Beautiful example. Okay? That is the creation of the jivas. Yata pruthivyam oshadayaha sambhavanti. So let us look at this. So you got prithvi, earth, mud. Then you got a seed. You put the seed in, you water the seed. What happens? It germinates. And then eventually it sprouts. And then it becomes a plant. And that plant becomes a Oshadi is a type of plant which gives us food, which we eat. Okay. So this is how the creation of the jivas happens, says Angirasa. So let's think about this problem a little bit more. First question, does the earth becomes the plant? That is the first question. So who wants to take this and talk about this? Does the earth become the plant, or there is something else going on here? Anybody wants to come in and tell us about this example, what they think is going on here? Okay, no problem. So the earth, Sushruth, go for it.
No, the earth is separate. It nourishes the seed. The seed is a jiva in itself. So, if there is no seed, the earth cannot automatically become a plant. There has to be a seed for the earth to nourish. So, they're two
Brilliant.
separate things.
Brilliant, Sushruth. So there are two separate things going on here. There is the earth, there is the seed. The earth does not become the seed. The earth is there. There has to be a seed. And then what happens? We should never forget the concept of Abhimani Vyapadeshastu Vishesha Anugatibhyam. We have done this before. So when I say earth or when I say Prithvi, okay, it might mean Jada Prithvi, but actually it means the Abhimani of the Prithvi. The Prithvi is under the control of an Abhimani Devata according to Vedic pantheon. So that can be Bhudevi, or it can be Shani, who is the Abhimani Devata of Prithvi. Okay. The Prithvi operates because there is an Abhimani inside the Prithvi who holds the Prithvi and gives it a particular function. Now, inside the Bhudevi and Shani is the Antaryami Paramatma, who is the independent controller of all this. So that is how you look at this verse. So first you think about the Prithvi also has got a sentient being behind it, and the Prithvi is operating because there is a sentient being behind it. First point. But the seed is different. Okay. The seed, as Sushruth said, is the jiva. Okay. Now, how does the jiva in the seed, how does that become a plant? Manjunath ji or Sheila ji?
Madhu, I had a doubt about this Shani, Abhimani Devata. Is it the planet Saturn Shani, or is it just the Tattva Abhimani Devata?
So, good question, Sheila ji. So it can be both. But in this context, we are looking at the Shani, who is the Prithvi Abhimani Devata. Thank you, Sheila ji. So now when you look at the seed here, okay, so I just want to remind you, okay, before we do that. Now, so Sushruth said the seed is like the jiva, okay. So here is the problem. Souls are eternal. They're never born, okay. Katha Upanishad that we have done clearly says Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. So there is this Nitya, which is the Jivas, and Nityo Nityanam is the Antaryami Paramatma. Gita 2:12, of course, is the most famous verse, isn't it? Who wants to recite this? Let's get somebody to recite the 2:12, please. Any takers for 2:12? Pragnesh?
Yes, thank you. Na tvaham jatunasam na tvam neme janadipa na chaiva na bhavishyama sarve vayam atagarapam.
Ragnesh, thank you very much. So perfect. So Krishna, that is the very first verse of philosophy. Yeah, the very first philosophy that Krishna is saying is the 2:12, where he says, I was always there, you are all there. You are always have been there. So bringing the concept of eternal difference between Paramatma and Jiva. Okay, that is the very first verse. There, Jiva is given that you are eternal, I am eternal. So in this context, when Jiva is eternal, Paramatma is eternal, what is that? How is that seed idea? How does it operate? Okay, so let's think about this problem. And I wanted to remind you about this beautiful verse in Chandogya Upanishad, isn't it? In 6th chapter, we have done this when in that example, when Uddalaka asks Nachiketa to go and get so when this is a quick question. So in Chandogya Upanishad, who are the characters here? So who is this and who is this? Who wants to give us the answer? So that is
Uddalaka and
Shvetaketu.
Shvetaketu.
Yeah, brilliant. Both of you got right. So in Chandogya Upanishad, there's a discussion between Uddalaka and Shvetaketu. So Uddalaka is teaching Shvetaketu about Paramatma and how you are different from that Paramatma. So there was this example, isn't it? Nyagrodha phalam ata ahara idam bhagava iti binditi binna bhagava iti kimmatra pashyati anva ivema danaha bhagava iti. Yeah. Asmad angaikam binditi binna bhagavaiti kimmatra pashyati na kinchana bhagavaiti. So this seed. So what did Uddalaka say? Go and get the Nyagrodha fruit. He goes and gets the Nyagrodha fruit. Then he says, break it open. What do you see? I see lots of seeds. Take one seed. So Uddalaka takes one seed. Shvetaketu takes one seed. Uddalaka says, break open the seed. He breaks open the seed. And Uddalaka said, what do you see? He said, I can't see anything. Tam hovacha yam vai somya etam animanam na nibalayase etasya vai somya esho animna evam mahanyagrodha tishtati shraddastva somya iti. He said, this huge Nyagrodha tree comes from the seed, and when you break open the seed, you can't see anything there. From something that you can't see, from that subtle entity, this whole Nyagrodha tree comes. Yeah, so that is that Chandogya Upanishad 6. Think about this. I'm digressing slightly, but it's relevant here. Think about this, that sweet seed. So when I say the seed, it's a metaphorical example of the jiva that is there inside that seed, and inside the jiva is the Paramatma. Okay, so that seed, the jiva, grows in this Prithvi, and then it becomes an Oshadi. So it acquires a body, isn't it? Basically, if you take this is the jiva. This jiva acquires a body, and that body becomes this plant. So that is the metaphor there of saying yata prithvyam oshadayaha sambhavanti. That is how the jivas are created. Okay, here is an interesting philosophy here. So Angirasa is giving us these examples to remind us of a deep philosophy of Vedic cosmology. Krishna in 2:12 has said jivas are eternal. Okay, but these jivas have a creation. What is that creation? They acquire a material body and they come into samsara. Okay, so this particular example should remind us of a very, very fundamental problem of philosophy, not just Eastern philosophy, but world philosophy of there is gross inequality in this world. Okay, some jiva is very rich, somebody is very poor, somebody is dying in war, whereas somebody is sitting happily in a luxurious hotel. Somebody is intelligent, somebody is not that intelligent. Somebody is, very happy, somebody is not very happy. So there appears to be a level of gross inequality in this world. Okay, so can God be accused of partiality and cruelty? So that is a very, very fundamental problem of theistic schools of philosophy, both in Catholicism and in Vedic theism. This is a fundamental problem of when you look at the world outside, there seems to be a gross inequality. Why does Paramatma allow that? Why does God allow these inequalities and suffering in this world? Can God be accused of partiality or cruelty? Okay. Anybody has do folks want to contribute at this point their views as to, can we accuse Paramatma of partiality and cruelty? Because the seeds are all having different problems. There is a lot of inequality in this world, isn't it? So can we accuse him of partiality and cruelty? Who wants to take up this question? Because it's relevant to this philosophy that we are discussing.
Madhusudanji, this is Prakash. Namaste.
Yeah.
We don't accuse God for that, because in our system, since we are accepting karma and previous births, based on that, this Janma is formed, so that there is the inequalities because of that. And I also want to make one quick point. I think in book of John, when Jesus Christ gives eyesight to a blind man, then his disciple asks Jesus why this man was born blind, for which there is no answer in the Bible. They have to come to our system to get the answer and accept multiple births and then karma. So that's all I want to say. Thank you. Namaskara.
Thank you, Prakashji. So there is just a leading up to that. You said it is the karma that is leading to it, isn't it? So why do different souls do different karmas, Prakashji? Do you want to come there?
Sure, definitely, because it is based on every soul is different. That is our fundamental premise. Jiva Jiva Veda. Every soul is different, and based on its intrinsic nature, it acts, and that is why the karma is different for different jivas.
Thank you, Prakashji. Wonderful, wonderful answer. So this is what this illustration is all about here. It is not just one soul actually becoming a seed and becoming a plant. Okay, a Nyagroda seed becomes a Nyagroda tree. A mango seed becomes a mango tree. A neem seed becomes a neem tree. Okay, a neem seed will not become a Nyagroda tree, and vice versa. So these are all fundamental rules of how the natural principle and how the nature operates. Okay, so is how, as Prakashji so eloquently and beautifully gave an explanation here, all that is going on here is material universe is the garden. Okay, Brahman is the gardener. He is so graceful that he is actually looking after this. He is giving us all the facilities and also giving us water, sunshine, and everything else so that this tree can grow. He is the gardener. Okay, the jiva is the seed. Okay, now since as we did in 2:12 of Bhagavad Gita, souls are uncreated. Each soul has its own intrinsic attributes. So all that Bhagavanta does is he is so infinitely graceful and helpful that he just gives us the facilities so that we work out our own intrinsic attributes. Okay, he is same to everybody. He is equal to everybody. It is only each one of us, based on our capacities, we become different trees or different plants. Yeah, this is like all these folks here in a classroom sitting for an examination. Okay, they are all being given the same question paper, which is called samsara here. They've all got the same question paper, and each student here has to answer this samsara based on their own capacities. Not all students get 100%. Not all of them fail. Some of them get distinction. Some of them just pass. Some of them have to repeat the exam all over again. So similarly is the affairs of the universe. Yeah, so says Veda Vyasa in this very, very important sutra, in the Avirodha Adhyaya. Okay, Vaishamya Nairghrinya Na Sapekshatvad Tatahi Darshayati. Okay, so when we look at this particular illustration, we need to be thinking about the creation of the jivas. What does it actually mean? The creation of the jivas means acquisition of a gross body, and that gross body in millions and eternal births that we are taking depends upon our karma, as Prakashji mentioned. That karma is dictated by jiva swabhava. Okay, anadi jiva swabhava, anadi karma, purushakya prayatna. These three determines what we do in the universe. Okay, so those are key ideas that we need to get reminded at this stage. Okay, so moving on. So the next verse is interesting. Then it says, Yata Sataha Purushat Keshalomani. That is the third line. That is the third understanding of the Vedic cosmology. So in our body, for example, we get hair, isn't it? Hair grows on our body. Yeah. So when does the hair grow in our body? Only when we are alive. Okay. When we are alive, the hair grows in our body. What does being alive means? Being alive means when the Sat is inside our body. So who is Sat? Primarily Sat is the Paramatma. And when the Sat leaves, the Jiva has to go along. He has got no other option. When Sat decides to leave the body, the Jiva also has to leave. So there are two sentient beings there. When they leave, the body is dead, the hair stops growing. So in this example again, yata sataha purushat keshalo mani. As long as the Sat is there in this Purusha, then the hair grows. Again, talking about the efficient cause of the universe. So one idea there is hair grows in a living body. Body is living when the Jiva is there in the body. The Jiva resides as long as Sat, who is his Antaryaman, is there in the body. When the sentient principle should be there for the hair to go. So that is a easy logical deduction of this illustration, saying that a sentient principle is always required for the growth of the hair. Okay. Now, here is another important idea. Do we put any effort in making the hair to grow? Okay. So our hair just grows. It feels like it's a very involuntary thing that it grows. We don't make any effort to say, can I have a long hair? The hair just grows. Okay. There is no conscious effort to grow our hair. Okay. So the idea there of what Angirasa is telling us is that the creatorship of Akshara is an effortless act. Okay, so we do not put an effort to grow our hair, it just grows. So there is the idea of effortless action of Paramatma. It is not that he is putting a lot of effort and then creating the universe. It's a very effortless act. Okay, so that is the third concept of Vedic cosmology that Angirasa is telling us. Okay, yata urna nabhihi srijate grihnate cha yata pruthivyam oshadayaha sambhavati yata satah purushat keshalo mani. Okay, so again, we need to keep thinking about this problem because the philosophy gets more deeper here, and that is what I want to focus on for the rest of the next 20 or so minutes. Material creation in Vedantic philosophy. Okay, so this is what Angirasa is talking in these verses. That look, Akshara, he is Bhuta Yonim. Paripashyanti Diraha, the knowledgeable consider him as Bhuta Yoni, or the Karana or the Utpatti Sthana of Bhuta, which are the Jivas and the material world. And then after he has said that, he has given three very, very clear examples of what is going on. Yata urnanabihi srijate grihnate cha yata pruthivyam oshadayah sambhavanti yata satah purushat keshalo mani. Three examples have been given here to give us an idea of creation. But in Vedantic philosophy, over the last 1,500 years or so, there are some different views here. So we all know the view of the Mayavada school of Vedanta, okay, which is also popularly known as Advaita, but primarily it is called Mayavada. Okay. Their view of creation is this universe, this material universe is a vivarta. Vivarta means it's a superimposition. Superimposition, what is the example that is given there? The example that is given here, there is it's dark, you're walking in the fields, it's dark, there is a rope on the ground, but because it's dark, you perceive the rope as a snake. Okay, so that snake superimposition is the material world. When you go near and you put a torchlight, the rope is not there, only the snake is not there, only the rope remains. So that snake has been removed. So that snake is the universe, which is an illusion. Okay, that is the Mayavada view of creation. So do your homework, and many of you would be very familiar with this Vivartavada of Mayavada. Okay, it's an interesting hypothesis, but the issue here is we are doing Atharvana Upanishad, where Angirasa is giving three examples of creation. spider's web is not a superimposition of this on the spider. Okay, so this illustration here does not support the vivarta of Mayavada. Period. Yeah, there are no ifs, no buts, no arguments. The spider's web is not a superimposition on the spider. Okay. Now, if you take the second one, again, this plant is not a superimposition on the Prithvi. Okay, so there is no, the three illustrations here, similarly, the hair is not a superimposition on this body. The hair is there. Yeah. So the three illustrations, at least from Angirasa's perspective, do not support superimposition theory of Vivarta. Okay, so think about this. You may have a counter argument around this. I would be very interested to understand and see how that will actually go with Angirasa's illustration. Let's not forget, Atharvana Upanishad is Apaurushaya Veda. Yeah. So what is the Apaurushaya Veda? It is the supreme source of authority of knowledge. How do we decide the superior authority of knowledge? Apaurushayatva, Nityatva, Swataha Pramanya. It is Pramanya on its own. It doesn't need external proofs to prove its validity. It is self-valid. And that self-valid Upanishad does not say that this spider's web is an imposition on the spider, that this plant is not a superimposition on the seed, and the hair is not a superimposition at all. Okay, so something to think about here, yeah, about the creation. Now, the classic way in which creation is viewed in Vedantic philosophy is, you have the mud, you have the potter, there is the wheel, the potter takes a clod of clay, puts it on the wheel, spins the wheel, and then he makes the pot. So in this example, the potter is Brahman. The mud is the Mula Prakriti. So this Brahman makes pots. These are the objects of the universe. These various plates and so on, you can say, is the object of the universe. You can see this pot as jivas with bodies in samsara. So this Brahman is making all this. Okay. So that is another view of looking at the creation of the universe. So in this equation, you should ask two questions. Does this potter transform himself into the pot and the plates? Or this potter uses this mud and then makes the pot? Is the potter an efficient cause of the universe and the bodies of the jivas, or does he himself transform into the plates and the pots? Okay, that is an interesting example, right? And that is where Visishtadvaita and Tattvavada come in. So in Visishtadvaita, it is called Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karana. So their view is this Brahman himself transforms into the plate and the pots. Okay. And of course, Brahman is there. Okay. Whereas in the Tattvavada view, Brahman is there, pot is there, the mud is there. This mud is eternally dependent on this potter. But all that the Brahman does is he takes this mud, creates the universe. So he is just an efficient cause, but he controls the material universe. Okay, so that is the Tattvavada view. So there are three different spectrums. They are fascinating in their own right. So what we should do here is look at this particular verse and see whether that fits into these hypotheses. So from where you see from the examples that Angirasa is given, Mayavada does not fit into it. There is no superimposition discussed here at all. The transformation or parinama, as it's called, again, these three examples do not illustrate the transformation or parinama of Brahman becoming the material universe. To me, what it looks like is the spider, seed, and hair illustrates that Akshara is the efficient cause of the universe, and the material cause is Mula Prakriti, which is under his control. Okay, so that is how the philosophy progresses. So when we are doing this particular verse, this actually is a very, very important verse. Yata Urnanabihi, this particular verse and the three examples, never ever forget this, because this is something that we see every day in our lives. And that is why Angirasa has taken a beautiful example there. When you go to the garden, you see the spider. Think about the material cause, how the material universe is coming. When you see these plants growing in your garden, think about how the jivas are coming into creation. when men who shave they do the shaving every day, think about the yata sataha purushat keshalomani. So these are such practical examples. Srinivasanji.
Yeah, if you know, if in a way, if we look at this Bodhvanabi and then this Prakriti, about the seed and everything, in a way, it is the part of the material itself is kind of coming out, right? It is a transformation actually. Okay, so it's kind of difficult to say that it is not. Okay, here. Yeah, that is debatable, right? So it doesn't quite fit in there, right? So that is maybe like I will give that one. But it is the transformation of the seed that gives the plant. Similarly, the kind of net is also a transformation of its own body into another shape. So it's difficult to discount. In my, I'm just having a hard time rationalizing that.
So very interesting thoughts, Srinivasanji. Then again, we have to think about when the seed transforms into a plant or the body of the spider transforms into the web. We should also think about, there is the other sutra of Badarayana, right? Rachana na anupapatteshta na anumanam. Rachana. So a non-sentient being does not have a capacity for self-initiated action. So we should never forget that, I think. So if you take a body which is just a jada, the body is not a living thing. Dead body is also there. There is a living body. The living body is living because there is a sentient being inside it which is directing the activity. So that way so that is how you can philosophize. The other point that you're saying is transformation. So that is very interesting. Srinivasanji, you've raised your hands again. You want to say something? Yeah, thanks. Okay. So the transformation is a very important problem. So that's called Karyavada. So if those of you who are interested in this, that is a whole onslaught of philosophy there. Sat Karyavada, Asat Karyavada, Vivarta, etc., cause and effect. Transformation. Is transformation real or not? Is effect already in the cause or not? Is cause different from effect? So these are all deep philosophical ideas that you need to think about. But certain schools of philosophy will say, when there is a cause, the cause transforms into an effect, but the effect has a particular purpose, whereas the cause does not have a purpose for that particular purpose. I'll take an example here. You have the clod of clay. A clod of clay is the same as this pot, because this is also made of clay. If you break open this pot and then you mix it up, it'll again become a clod of clay. But there is a difference. Although this pot is come from the clay, it has transformed itself into a clay, but it has a purpose. Yeah, so it has a different purpose, such as holding the water, holding milk, whatever. Yeah, whereas a clod does not do that. Yeah, so this particular idea of transformation is not a superimposition. Transformation is not an illusion, because it has got a purpose that is different from the cause. So in that sense, it is different. So that is how the philosophy goes. So anyway, thanks very much for those very deep ideas that we need to discuss about. But please go and check out the cause and effect theory in Vedic philosophy. It is a lot more advanced than the cause and effect theories of Western philosophy, I can tell you that. So moving on. Okay, so here is the other idea. We are just still dwelling on this concept. So what have I said? Yata sataha purushat keshalo mani. Hair grows in a living body. Yes, fine. So we need a sentient principle. Okay, fine. And I've also told you that this is an effortless act of Paramatma, just as how hair effortlessly comes out of the body. Okay. Here is another question, because each line of Angirasa is related to the previous line. We have to understand the whole philosophy in concept, in context. So what is Angirasa saying then? The next question that should come into our mind is, if it is a spontaneous act, is it a thoughtless act with no purpose? Yeah, we don't think and say hair needs to grow. And similarly, if creation is coming out of Paramatma without any thought of his, is that how it is happening? Is it a spontaneous act, or is it a thoughtful act of Paramatma. So that is a key idea there, talking about the efficient cause. So essentially what is going on here is Angirasa is expanding the ideas of efficient cause of the universe. What does it say? Tapasa chiyate Brahma. Okay. This is a very, very important and significant statement from Angirasa. Some schools conveniently decide not to discuss these ideas in context. Okay. Tapasa chiyate Brahma. Yadbhuta yonim, he does all the creation, but it is not a spontaneous activity, Shuanaka. It is a tapasa chiyate Brahma. What is tapas? Tapas means what? Alochane, something that you think and then you do. Okay. So tapasa chiyate Brahma. Okay, so first let's look at this word Brahma first before we go to the other ideas. Okay, so who wants to tell us what is the meaning of Brahman? So previously, see how the language of Angirasa is saying. He has initially said Atapara yaya tad aksharam adigamyate. Yeah, tata aksharat sambhavati iha vishwam tapasa chiyate Brahma. So he's now calling this Paramatma as Brahman, who is the creator of this universe. Okay. So who wants to give us the meaning of Brahman, and then we link it up with Akshara? So who wants to tell us what Brahman actually means? Okay, so any takers? Brahman? Meaning of Brahman?
Brahman is Akshara.
Akshara, but what is the meaning of Brahman, Kamalaji? What does Brahman stand for?
Brahman connects himself to tapas, which Brahman thought of creating the world.
That is fine. I'm asking about what is the meaning of the word Brahman, Kamalaji? What is
Brahman is Paramatma.
Paramatma. Okay, Suresh ji?
Brahanto, I mean, the one that is bigger, the one that is real, I mean, is higher or greater.
Yeah, thanks, Suresh. So, Atakasmat
Bhavanti asmin
Brahmeti.
gunaha.
Yeah, so should very nice. Do you want to repeat that again?
Puranti asmin gunaha. So it's full of auspicious attributes.
Okay, thank you, Sushit. So let's think about Brahman. Atakasmat uchyate Brahmeti Brihanto hi asmin gunaha. That which is all pervasive. All pervasive in what? Time, space, and gunas. Okay. That which is all pervasive in time, space, and gunas is technically called Brahman. Okay. Look at Akshara. What is Akshara? We've done it 2 or 3 weeks ago, right? The etymology of the word Akshara. Go back to the etymology. Ashnute iti Aksharam. That which is all pervasive is called Aksharam. Ashnute iti Aksharam. All pervasive in what? Time, space, and gunas. He is called Akshara. Vishnu. So who is going to tell us what is the meaning of Vishnu? What is the etymology of Vishnu? Because we know it is not a sectarian name. Some people think so. It is their problem, but it is very etymological, isn't it? What is the etymology of Vishnu?
It is all pervading, Matuji.
Thank you, Suresh. Vishal Vyaptau. Vishnu, etymology is Vishal Vyaptau, that which is all pervasive. All pervasive in what? Time, space, and gunas. So these kind of, when you do these kind of analysis of etymology, the Sarva Sabda Vachyatva, the Samanvaya of Shastra is 100%. And we need to always bring it in when we do our discussions to see how every word is the same. It is not out of context. Angirasa used Brahma because Akshara also means all pervasive being. Vishnu also means all pervasive being. So Akshara means Vishnu. That is why in chapter 15, verse 16 to 18 talks about this Akshara. Yeah. And of course, many Upanishads talk about Akshara, which we have discussed in the last 2 or 3 weeks. So here Angirasa says, this Akshara or Brahman, how did he create? It was not a spontaneous, it was not just automatically it came. It is not an automatic thing that happened, spontaneous, some naturalist things that universe somehow spontaneously got created. Yeah. No, it says tapasa chiyate Brahma. So tapasa, this Brahman, voluntary contemplation, deep thought, a well-planned activity. This is a well-planned, thought-out activity of Brahman to bring the universe into creation. So Angirasa says, tapasa chiyate Brahma. And when you look at various verses in Upanishads, they'll say the same thing. Taittiriya Upanishad, for example, will say, talk about creation again. So akamayat, desire to create. So akamayat bahusyam prajayeti. Sa tapo atapyata. Sa tapas taptva, same tapas. Tapas taptva idam sarvam asrujata. Yadidam kincha tad srishtva tadeva anupravishat. Tad anupravishya satcha tacha prabhavat. And then the Taittiriya Upanishad goes on. Chandogya Upanishad, we have done this chapter 6, and that is why I put this here. Sa am tad aikshata. Aikshata, it saw. Yeah. Tisro devataha anena jivena atmana anupravishyata nama rupa vyakaravaniti. So go back to those verses. They have, every Upanishad talks about the same thing. There is complete consistency. Okay. Devata aikshata. Aikshata means to see, to view, to desire, to think. Desire what? Jivena atmana anupravishya. Okay, that let me create all these jivas. Then the Lakshmi, Chaturmukha, Mukhya Prana, Shiva, Rudra. That is what the Chandogya Upanishad chapter 6 talks about. In the creation part of that Chandogya, when it says Sadeva Somya Idamagra Asid Ekameva Advitiyam, and then it talks about all this. Okay. So this tapasa chiyate Brahma is actually very, very important, because Angirasa's view is 100% clear. Tapasa chiyate Brahma. This Brahman did alochane, or voluntary contemplation. So creatorship of Brahman is a voluntary act. In contrast, illusory projection is always unpremeditated and an involuntary action. Okay, this is fundamentals of thought. Yeah, I don't know how some schools have slipped on this. When you look at this verse, Brahman thought, nobody thinks and say, let me have an illusion. Okay, nobody thinks and say, let me have an illusion. Let me drive into the desert and let me see the mirage and see it as a river. Nobody voluntarily thinks like that. Nobody says, oh, let me go into this field. There will be a rope and now I will see a snake on the rope. No, these are involuntary things. Illusory projection is unpremeditated, involuntary things. Okay, I feel this is where the philosophy of the nihilistic philosophies fall down. When you look at the language of the Vedas, we are all entitled to have our own views, but what we should not do is put our views into the Vedas. That would be unfortunate. What we need to do is look at the Vedas and understand what the Vedas are saying, rather than putting our ideas into the Vedas. So here Vedas are saying, tapasa chiyate Brahma. Okay, the Brahman thought and then he created. Yeah. So Angirasa's illustration and statement does not support the cosmic illusion theory. At least from this verses, the language that we are seeing here. Of course, we can have our own hypothesis and build a castle, airy-fairy castles with no foundation. So that is individual choice. Okay, so what's going on here? Srinivasanji.
So it is tapasa chiyate, I mean, akayamayate, that means there is an intention. That is what, you are saying. So that is on one side, right? Because it is, because the Upanishad themselves say that, right? But then either the same, different Upanishad or in somewhere else, we have also heard that he creates this one as an lilaya, right? Lilaya means it is like as though as an expression of his infinite ananda, right? See, that is a different thing. It's not, there is no intent there. It's an reaction, right? So wherein if we, like us, have to do any act, there is one part of is intended, right? We want to get happiness or we want to avoid dukkha, we act, right? There is the intention there. Other types of act is like, udasina is another type of act, right? Or expression of either we are in deep, whether we are in pleasure or whether we are happiness or sorrow, right? That also where we act, but then that is more of a reaction. So there are different types, right? So one is with intention, but wherein the act of Leelaya is more of an reaction to the happiness that he is in a state. Okay, so how do we reconcile this?
Yeah. So thank you, Srinivasanji. If the kohe vanyat kaha pranyat yadesha anandaha nasyat. So as you know, that is a verse from the Taittiriya Upanishad, right? That gives us this idea. Like how when we are in Ananda, we jump and dance. And these jumping and dancing and moving our hands may not have a purpose, but because we are in Ananda, we do that. So the Upanishads there, as you very beautifully pointed out, he says that this Brahman is full of Ananda. And when there is Ananda, there is this spontaneous action. So that is how is the creatorship. So the way I have learned from my Guru Srinivasanji, the answer there for us to understand is that this is an effortless act of Brahman because he's Sarvajna, he's Sarvakarta, he knows everything, he's omnipotent and so on. It's an effortless act. How do we understand that effortless act of Brahman? The effortless act of Brahman is like how when somebody is full of happiness, he jumps and dances. Similarly, this Brahman is full of Ananda and he is dancing. That is what is the creatorship of Brahman. So where it is talking about Lokavatta Leela Kaivalyam, as it's discussed in the Sutra, that view there is, it is an effortless act, but nevertheless, that effortless act has another side to it, which is that Tapasachiyate Brahma. There is a conscious principle who is Sarvajna, who knows how the creation needs to be done in eternal cycles and how in eternal cycles that destruction needs to happen, how every component of the universe has to be maintained and given knowledge, its objecthood of knowledge and its pravriti and pramati as it's called. All these things are done by this Brahman because Tapasa chiyate Brahman. So I hope that answers your question of two sides to this. But just because he's Ananda and dancing does not mean that is not something that he doesn't know. He's Sarvajna. He knows every damn thing that is going on in the universe. So I hope that gives you a perspective. So Srinivasanji, do you have any other idea, any other thoughts that you want to share on this very important topic?
So maybe like one way to kind of rationalize is because if somebody is intending, right, want to do something means that means they want, right? But then God, he is like Gunapurna, Anandapurna, he doesn't want anything. Okay?
Yeah.
So he doesn't want anything. So in that respect, he desired means, it doesn't sound quite right. Right? So then what we should probably I would probably like rationalize that one is, it's not for him, right? It is for para for the sake of others, like for the sake of us.
Yeah.
So he creates, right? So
Brilliant,
not for his
Srinivasanji.
own, his own thing. So then you can say, then you can combine, okay, his intention is not for self, right? For benefit of others, and he does it as a Leelaya.
Yeah.
If you combine it that way, I think then it kind of, then I can buy that.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant, Srinivasanji. So, Na Prayojanavatvat is coming in the next couple of slides to try and reconcile and bring it all together. So, I don't think we have time today to deal with this, but that is a very key idea. So, this creatorship of Brahman is not for himself because yes, Sarvajnaha Sarvavid Jnanamayam Tapaha. So, that is the very next verse where this idea is, as you're probably aware, this idea of Na Prayojanavatvat is reconciled by Veda Vyasa in this particular context. So we will deal with that. But thank you very much for sharing. Prakashji, you had raised your hands.
I just wanted to just say this small idea, that concept of Swagata Veda Vivarjita, where the Tapasa and Ananda or Leela, whatever the qualities, they are all non-different. So Tapasa doesn't mean that he's putting in any effort. So there is no contradiction, because that is if we bring that concept, I think all this what you can say, the questions can be answered. That is something which I thought about it, so I just wanted to put in there.
Thank you, Prakashji. Wonderful, wonderful. So yeah, beautiful. So we got 2 more minutes to close today's session. So tapasa chiyate brahma. Hold on to that idea about voluntary act, and also hold on to the idea of what Srinivasanji mentioned about that he is Ananda and he just creates of Taittiriya Upanishad. Hold on to how Prakashji has also said there is no internal difference between Brahman. His Ananda is the same as his creatorship, etc. So hold on to those beautiful ideas that we will discuss in all its glory. So, okay. So, tapasa chiyate brahma, tato annam abhijayate. Annat prano manaha satyam lokaha karmasu cha amrutam. Okay, so this is such an important verse. I don't think we will have time to deal with this, but I'll tell you very quickly what it is. If you remember our sessions on creation, when you remember all those 24 tattvas and how creation, how is Brahmanda created, how is Pindanda created, and so on, that is what Angirasa is talking about. Okay, tato annam abhijayate, tapasa chiyate brahma, Brahma thought, tataha, then annam abhijayate, Anna was created. What is that Anna? Anna can be Shri Tattva Chaturmukha Brahma. Then what happened? Annad anantaram pranaha, Mukhya Prana was created after that. And then what happened? Satyam. And then from Mukhya Prana and Chaturmukha, then what happened? Manaha. Annat prano manaha. Manaha was created. Who is Mana Abhimani? Ahankara Tattva Abhimani or Rudra. Rudra was created. After Rudra was happened, what happened? Tanmatras, Panchabhutas created. What are this? Satyam. Okay. So these are all irrefutable words of Angirasa. World is not an illusion. Angirasa is clearly saying, tato annam abhijayate, annat pranaha manaha. Manaha creates this universe, material universe of Panchabhuta, which is Satyam. And this material universe is what is called lokas, various lokas. And what do jivas do? They do all the karmas there. And then what happens based on their karma? They go to Swarga and other places. So that is the idea that Angirasa is taking us there. Okay, these are beautiful, beautiful ideas. This particular verse opens in 3 different ways. Tato annam abhijayate, annat pranaha manaha satyam lokaha karmasucha amrutam. So it will open up in 3 different aspects in Brahmanda and in Pindanda, and in Pindanda, which is you and me in this Pindanda. What happens? That is what Angirasa is going to take us in the next session. So I'm going to close at this point. There are lots and lots of ideas. And again, want to thank everyone for their really interactive session and bringing up some deep philosophical concepts in this forum. And that is what we should be doing, right? When we do Upanishad Chintana, we should be thinking about deep philosophical concepts rather than skimming the surface and then just clapping hands with somebody else's philosophy. No, we have to do our manana and use our guru, who is who? Veda Vyasa. And then understand what this Upanishads is. So when you do that, the philosophy of the Upanishads is just incredible. Yeah, it is so on par with various views of cosmology. So we can talk about this endlessly. So we will continue with this discussion in a fortnight's time, because next week we have Gita Chintana and we are going to start chapter 1. So this is going to be the first chapter that if you remember 3-4 weeks ago, we said setting the scene as to why Gita, where it is and so on. Now we are going to start chapter 1. Venkatesh ji is going to coordinate that. We got a fantastic lineup already of talking about chapter 1 of Bhagavad Gita. So please join us next Sunday for yet another interactive session. Okay. So on that note, Krishna Pranamastu. And if we have any questions to discuss, now is the time to do so.
Madhuji, I had one doubt, because from Vishnu you have said Mula Prakriti, Shri Bhudurga, but Annam you have said only Vidya and Mahat Tattva. So Mula Prakriti is Avyakta, is it? I mean, I'm not getting that, you see. So
yeah. So interesting. Thanks, Sheilaji. So Annam, so that word Annam needs a little bit of dissection. So we need to think about that word Annam. Is Annam just the food that we eat? Or is this Annam the material world? Or of Taittiriya Upanishad, Ahamannam, Ahamannam, Ahamannadaha. Chaturmukha Brahma is doing that prayer. Ahamannam, Ahamannam. Okay. Is that Annam Chaturmukha or Annam Vai Dakshina? Anna is a name of Shri Tattva. Anna Lakshmi.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
have Anna Lakshmi, right? In all
Yeah.
these Ashtalakshmis, there is this Anna
Yeah.
Lakshmi. So Lakshmi is also Anna. Okay. So
Yeah.
Tato Annam Upajayate, there means Annam means that the creator, and I think we discussed this very briefly last week when Sushrut also was raising these kind of ideas, is that Annam's, that is Lakshmi's creation actually means prompting Lakshmi to initiate creation. So that prompting Lakshmi to initiate creation is what Brahman does or Vishnu does, says the Shastras. So that is how you read that verse, Shilaji, that Annam means so many things. It can mean Annamaya Kosha for Pindanda. It can mean, Tasmadva, Etasmad, Atmanaha, Akasha, Sambhutaha,
That was
Akasha,
not
Vayuva.
actually, that was not my question. That is, I think I got the answer, but because Mula Prakriti you have written, Mula Prakriti, after that, like that was I had a little doubt.
So it is
about
it is a Shri Tattva which is called Annam. Thank you, Shilaji.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Anybody else? So if there are no further questions, can I request Suresh ji to recite Omkara and close today's session, please?
Yep.
Thank you everyone for another wonderful interactive session. So please do join us for Gita Chintana chapter 1 next Sunday. Look forward to it. So take care everyone, and we'll close today's session. Hare Krishna.